Fantastic day. I was just getting myself together here and getting myself ready, putting my phone on silent because phone calls will come through. Have my daughter on Chadwick duty so that if he, of course, sees a squirrel or some invisible bird outside, he's able to bark as much as he wants. I am just going to make sure I have everything ready to go. And then I am really looking forward to this evening. I know we're in various stages. We just finished up with the fall break, and we had 2 beautiful days off, and now we're just trying to grind things out. I hope everything is going well in your neck of the country, or wherever you're coming from. So I am waiting for just a few more folks. I think I have everything, got my water, my mouse together. What would be a good thing for you to go and grab is if you have a pen and paper or a Post-it note and a pen, just something that you could keep a tally score with this evening. This is it. A lot of folks, at least I know in my district where I am at, we are moving on from population and migration, and we're moving into other units. I know I've been speaking to other teachers and just trying to get a bead on where everybody is with their content area so that I can make sure that the next upcoming streams are really targeted and aimed towards you and your needs and what you need to be successful. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And this is just a fun and easy night. I just want to gauge where you are. If you are there, if you could just chime in and say hello, hi, so I could just know who, how many folks I'm working with tonight. If you just want to be a silent partner this evening, that is fine as well. But tonight's stream is going to focus on just reviewing population and migration. Just what are some key terms you should know? And I've really set it up so that it's more interactive, that I'm getting information from you and you're getting information from me. So I'm hoping that there are folks there that can chime in. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to jump right in with what all you're going to walk away with in this stream this evening. So please forgive me, I'm like reaching for 2 things at one time here, so I have to remember to keep my hand on this mouse. So let me go ahead and just say, as always, thank you so much for tuning in to Fiveable. We really appreciate, you turning in this evening. I know there's a lot of other things that you could be doing this evening. There's some great things on television, but the fact that you're committed to just reviewing, that's awesome to me. So remember to always follow us at Think Fiveable. Again, we are on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we are on YouTube. So please follow us there. It should also be mentioned that tonight, my main focus is that we are going to review just various key concepts you should fully comprehend as a result of completing the study of the population and migration unit. So I'm hoping that, and I know that we're all working from different textbooks, so I don't know what textbooks you're using. We're using the new Ravenstein textbook. Last year we had, for years we've had DeBage. We've been using that, and I've always had my hands on various resources from the Think 5 books, I think that's what they're called, and the Kaplan books. So whatever you're using, there's a whole bunch of concepts, but I'm hoping that I'm hitting the main ones that you should have come in contact with. And so we're going to jump right in because there's no time like the present. And I'm hoping that you will just chime in. So this is something that I want to call name that concept, because I hadn't, I didn't know what else to call it. So this just requires you to just type in a response. The total number of live births in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society is known as. What is that concept? And initials are fine. If you could just take a moment and type those in, I would greatly appreciate it. and we're just going to keep rolling through. And I'm going to wait a few moments just to see if there's anybody who's going to chime in while I also work on this screen, because I can never see the small little view there. And so the response to this question, to this name, that concept, should have been CBR. It should have been crude birth rate. So this is a concept that you should have studied and come in contact with, and that you should know intimately. So crude birth rate is the correct answer. Let's take a look at the next one. And the purpose of your little sheet of paper and your pen is just, if you would just go ahead and number your paper 1 through 32, because there are 32 key concepts that I'm going to hit with you this evening. And this will be a great way for you to keep track of what you got correct and what you missed. And at the end, you know you're a teacher if you have one of these little easy graders. And so at the very end, I am going to share your score with you. And this will also be a way for you to jot down any terms that you missed so that you could go back and study them on your own. Of course, if you're a Plus member, this PowerPoint, my presentation slide, will be uploaded so that you can use it over and over again. All right, let's take a look at the next concept. All right, so I want you to look at the image to the right of your screen, and I want you to name that DTM stage. So the yellow line, the blue line, and the green line, they all represent something specific. If you know what that line is, that's beautiful, because you should, but I would like for you to identify the characteristics that can be found in this particular stage, identify the stage, the name of the stage, characteristics that can be found in this stage. And it's always important to have go-to examples. I always teach my students, you need to have go-to examples of each of these stages of the DTM. So if you could go ahead and tell me, you could go in and just type that right in on the side. What is this stage? But I'm going to give you a few moments to put that in, and then I'll share some brief information with you related to that stage, to this stage. So you should have placed that this image represents 3. This is stage 3 of the demographic transition model. We call this stage the late expanding stage. So if you notice, there is countries, go-to examples of countries in this stage that really does depend. You could have countries that have experienced a fertility rate decline of at least 40% from transition levels. You could have said Costa Rica, El Salvador, Jamaica, Mexico. It doesn't, I mean, there's a bunch of countries that you can name, but I want you to have just at least one. If you're looking for countries in this stage that experience declines from 25 to 40%, that could be Honduras or Guatemala. Scrolling, let me just keep looking. If you're looking for countries that have only experienced 10 to 25% decline in this stage, yes, they still fall in this stage. Those go-to examples would be something like Nepal, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. Characteristics in this stage, you're going to notice that the birth rates are gradually going to decrease, that and this is generally due to women and their educational level going up and their status. So it's always due to women in this stage. Let me see, what are some other characteristics of this stage? Education, women having access to contraception, education levels. So those are things that would be considered. You're going to notice that the rate of natural increase is still coming up a little. That's going to be represented by that blue line. And so it's coming up some. So let's take a look next. All right, it's another name that concept. So the total number of deaths in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society is known as, and if you could go ahead and type in your response there. And the correct answer for that would be CDR, which is also known as crude death rate. So very good. All right, this concept should have come up in your population section dealing with where people live. And so looking at this map, I am asking you, this image represents what? So I want you to take a few moments, take it all in, look at it, and tell me, what does this map represent? If you had to give this map a title, what section is this? And I'm going to give you a few moments to type that in. Excuse me, what does this map represent? So you should have typed in what I refer to with my students, something called the BosWash Corridor, which is short for the Boston-Washington Corridor. This is the most populated section of the United States. So when we're looking at population patterns and you're looking at where the majority of the people live in the United States, the majority of them live in this section. And if you actually turned it, you would see that it does form a straight line. And so there's about 50 million people who reside in this section of the country. So this is a significant concept to understand when we're looking at patterns and, spatial concepts. So let's move on. All right, another name that concept. So the total number of deaths, that should say, in a year among infants under 1 year of age for every 1,000 births in a society is known as. So take a moment, think about what that concept is, and now type it in or jot it down on your sheet of paper. And again, I love these 3-letter, concepts that are easy to just write down really quick. But one of the things I want to note while you're working on what that answer could be is that when you are writing your FRQ, try not to use the acronyms. Try to just spell it out. The same amount of time that it takes you to just write the 3 letters, go ahead and spell it out for your readers to make it clear to them that you understand what the concept is. So you should have written down IMR, which represents infant mortality rate. So that's an important concept related to population. All right, let's keep ticking along. All right, take a moment, look at this map. It's really important that when a map is given to you that you try to take everything in associated. Remember, what type of map is this? This map is telling a story. This map represents a concept that you should know well from the unit of population and migration. So take a moment and jot down, what do you think this concept, this image represents? And let me give you a few minutes in case you want to chime in over here. And it's okay if you're silent tonight. I could keep rolling with it. All right, so by looking at this image represents the concept of agricultural density. Now, do you remember what the definition for agricultural density is? You should have that, the definition that you're forming in your mind should be, it's the ratio of the number of farmers to the total number of arable land. Arable land is the land that's actually suitable for growing crops. And that's an important concept to have retained in the population immigration unit, because there's only so much land that we have to grow food. And that's important when you're talking about how are we going to sustain the people in the area in which we live. Okay, let's move to the next concept. Another name that concept: the percentage growth of a population in a year computed as the crude birth rate minus the crude death rate is known as. Again, another three letters. What is this concept? Jot that down. And you should have written that concept is NIR, natural rate of increase. And so throughout the population and migration unit, you were looking at the demographic transition model in which this concept, we're looking at population pyramids, we're looking at where people live, and this line is actually represented on the DTM, the demographic transition model. All right, here we go. Well, I was just talking about this. So if you could name this structure. This graphical illustration shows the distribution of various age groups in a population, typically that of a country or region of the world. So this is A, and if you could take a moment and jot down your answer or type it down on the screen, what is this concept? You should have said, thank you so much, Elizabeth, you should have said that this is a population pyramid. Now, I'm going to pause here just for a moment and switch to the next screen, because there are some specific things that you should have learned about population pyramids, and I would be remiss if I didn't just slow down a moment and just explain what those are. So let's just take a look at this next image. Some of the things that you should know without a shadow of a doubt is that you should know that if we look up the middle of this particular, and I'm sorry if it's a little blurry, as you're looking up the middle of this population, you see these age groupings: 0, 0, 0 to 0, 4, 0, 5 to 0, 3. It's a little blurry on mine. Please know that these little age groupings are called cohorts. Please know that when we're looking at the very well, let me go here. When we're looking at the right side of the screen, those are your males in the population. When we're looking at the left side of the screen, you should know that those are your female in the population. If there are no labels on your population pyramid at all, and I know sometimes in the past, population pyramids have been used in the FRQ portion. If there are no labels at all, I need you to know what each of these sections mean and the information that it's given. So if there's no labels, the right is always going to be males. The left is always going to be females. Sometimes they'll put the cohorts, the age groups on the outside of the pyramid. Sometimes they'll put them in the middle and break them up like this. Please know that at the very top of the pyramid, you always have your elderly, those who are the oldest in your population. And at the very bottom of your pyramid, you're always going to have from youngest to the oldest. And remember that your pyramids are telling the story. You need to understand what the dependency ratio are, right? So your dependency ratio is always those who are 65 and older, who retired, or from those from 0 years, 1 year old, until we get to 18, the working age. That's the portion of your population that are dependents. That means the people in the middle of the pyramid, all of their money or portion of their money is going to support the top and going to support the bottom. That's what I wanted to say about that. Let's go on and continue with our little quiz and see what are some other concepts that you should know. All right, so I want to know, what type of factors are these? So you've learned in the population and migration, especially in the migration unit, you should have learned about some specific factors. All of these factors I have listed here fall under a particular category. Better jobs, lower taxes, nicer climate, better schools, more room, low crime, better medical care. What type of factors would you say these are? I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. And it has to do with why people move. So take a moment, think about what that is, jot your answer down or type it on the side there. What type of factors are these? Absolutely. You should write, you should have that, I remember my teacher talking about this, and I had this somewhere in my notes. These are pull factors. Absolutely correct. So these are all factors that entice people to leave the area where they are and move to another area. So I know for me, one of my reasons why we left New York, though I love my home state, it was cold. It was expensive there. I couldn't imagine trying to start a life and pay the taxes and pay and housing what I was going to pay in New York. So I migrated to Georgia, where the climate is more favorable. No, the job doesn't pay as much as I would have in New York, but there's a lot of things here that contributed to pulling me to this section of the country. All right, let's keep it rolling. All right, take a look at this map again. There's a lot of information going on. It's telling a story. Remember from the beginning part when you were just doing the introduction, this is a chloropleth map. It's telling you some information. So I want to know, the question that I have here, the fill in the blank is, the number of people per unit of arable land is known as. This is a particular type. You should have learned about several different types of density. So I want to know, which type of density does this fall under? And it's okay, maybe this is something you should have hit. I know it's something that I definitely hit with my students. So the number of people per unit of arable land, that means the land that you could actually live on, is known as blank. And let's see if you could get that. And I also want to state, while you're thinking about what this concept could be, is this number is helpful because it gives you a rough estimate of how many people are truly living in an area, because people can't live everywhere, right? There may be lakes, rivers. People can't live in the lake, well, unless you have a boat home. People can't live in the river unless you have, again, a boat home. So what's that land that you can actually live on? This is the one that we should really. And so for your answer, you should have physiological density. Absolutely correct. Okay, moving on. Y'all are rocking and rolling tonight. Okay, I want you to give these bullets a title. So all of these things fall under a particular category. And again, you would have learned about these things more specifically in your migration unit. So financial costs, emotional cost, knowledge of opportunities in the new place, personal characteristics such as gender, economic status, and age, being elderly and or poor, or government policies. They are not pull or push factors. So take that one out your mind if that was one that you were thinking. What would this be? What would be the title if you had to give this a title? And I'm going to give you a moment to think about what your title could be. Chadwick just walked into the room. Sir Chadwick. Okay, so if you had to give this a title, the proper title for this would be Barriers to Migration. In your migration unit, you should have learned about those things that hinder folks from moving. There are factors. Ravenstein's laws of migration talked about, that typically it's younger guys, men who are going to move, but there are also that they're going to go shorter distances, things of that nature. But there are also barriers to migration as well, right? And so all of these factors, the title should be barriers to migration. All right, next, fill in the blank. The permanent move to a new location is known as, it's just a general definition, just moving. What do we call it when people move from one place to another? Absolutely, you should have gotten migration. Good, good, thank y'all. I'm hoping that some of this is at least ringing true, and that you and that these are things that you hit. All right. So I did my best to try to draw my own visual and to do the best I can with it being on a computer. So name this type of migration. So if I go from my home, I start off at my home in the morning, then I go to school during the day, and then I go to my job at Popeyes in the evening, and then from there I go back to my home. What type of migration is this? It's usually short-term, repetitive movement. It occurs on a regular basis. It could be daily, it could be monthly, it could be yearly. I gave a daily example. Journeying every weekday from, one to home to school, or even recreation. What type? It's, to give you a hint, it has the word, it has a shape for the word. Absolutely. You should have cyclical movement or circular, circular or circulation. So absolutely correct. All right. Love this. This is one of my favorite concepts. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. This concept is explained in conjunction with the demographic transition model. So take a moment, look at the titles and what's written there, and tell me, what is this concept? And it's okay if you use initials, because I know you may not want to spell out the whole entire thing. But when we're looking at, it goes right in line with the DTM with stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's no 5 represented on this particular one, but a lot of what happens in 4. So do you remember learning this concept during your population? This would have been in your population unit. So take a look at that and see if you can remember. And to give you a hint, it has to do with the reasons why people die in each stage of the demographic transition model. And I want to switch here. And so it's a long word. You should have, and I know it's on the tip of your tongue, I know it is. It's called the Epidemiological Transition model. So if you look at stage 1, the reason why so many folks in stage 1 were passing away was probably due to disease or famine. In stage 2, pandemics, but they're going to start to go down. Man-made diseases is going to be number 3. Delayed degenerative diseases is the reason why people are living longer. So again, if that's not a concept that's familiar with you, take a moment and write that down. It's called the Epidemiological Transition model. All right, let's take a look at the next concept. Fill in the blank. The concept of blank refers to a general term covering all types of movement from one place to another M word, but just the ability to get up and go is called this concept. What do you think this concept is? Take a moment to type that. Here's a hint. It also starts with the letter M. Just a general concept. And you should have mobility. So just take a moment and just look at how many you've gotten correct so far, and what were some of the concepts that you're like, oh yeah, I gotta go back and check that one again because I really didn't do so good with it. So just keep track of that. But I think that you're doing fine so far. Remember, it's AP Human is a vocabulary rich course. I always consider every multiple choice question to be a vocabulary question. If I know the concepts in the multiple choice section, then I know how to apply that to the question. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, take a look at this map. Look at what the story that this map is telling. And let me read this to you. It says, this image represents the following concept: the part of the earth that is suitable for humans to live. What is that concept called? And it's okay. I can hardly say the word correctly. Sometimes it takes me a moment. So I will not be mad if you are upset if you can't spell it correctly. So what is this concept? And it does start with the E. And you should have Ecumene. I hope that's correct. Ecumene. So that's the part of the earth that is just suitable. So here's a map of an area, Canada. And if you notice, most of the people in Canada live in which section? North, south, east, or west? Or along which border? If you could type that in. So where do you see the majority of the population living? And you should have said in the southern part, and that's because that goes back to the two theory, right? You should have learned about the two theory that, people aren't going to live where it's too hot or too cold or too wet or too dry. So for Canada, our example here, people can't live in those really, really cold areas because it's just difficult to get the resources that you need, and it's just cold. All right, next one. Okay. I feel like I'm stuck here. All right. Name that concept. It's not a fill in the blank, it's a question. 1910 to 1970, African Americans leave the South for northern cities. This is an example of which type of migration. So again, we're back on the types of migration. What did we call this type of migration? When you get up and go because you want to or because you can. So I like this. I also have that migrants have chosen to move. And usually they're choosing to move during and this is an example of what we called the Great Migration. Usually it's for economic reasons, or sometimes it's environmental reasons as well. Absolutely correct. This is called voluntary migration. So I know for me and my folks, my family is originally from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Well, they were part of the Great Migration. My mom and my aunts and all of them decided, and uncles, we're going to go to New York because it has a lot of opportunities for African Americans. There's jobs there. It's not as I want to say racially divided, even though there was discrimination going on there, but they decided we're going to go there. And so that was called voluntary migration. Really good. Okay, next. All right, here we go. Name that stage of the DTM. Take it in. Look at the lines and what they represent. I guess I really should have labeled these for you, but I'm hoping that you seeing what's high and seeing what's low and at the bottom will also help you. So can you please identify this stage of the DTM? Can you name the stage of the DTM? Do you know any of the characteristics of this stage of the DTM? And what's your go-to example, excuse me, what's your go-to example for countries that can be found in this stage? So keep in mind, we've already done stage number 3. So through process of elimination, that one's off the table. So what stage of the DTM do you think this is? Excuse me. So this is stage 4. This is stage 4 of the DTM. Excuse me, I had a tickle. This is stage 4 of the DTM. It is called the low stationary stage. I absolutely love it. It's called the low stationary stage. Birth rates and death rates are both low at this point. There's a stabilizing population. Countries who tend to be in this stage have stronger economies. They have higher levels of education. They have better health care, higher proportion of women who are working. So keep in mind, if the status of the women increase, then your birth rates are going to go down. Can you give me a go-to example? If nothing else, you should be able to provide me the one example of a country that is in this stage. Absolutely correct, the United States. So I always want that to be for each of those stages of the DTM. You have to make sure that you understand what the birth rate, the death rate, and the rate of natural increase, excuse me, what the rate of natural increase is stating. So sorry. And have a go-to example. Oh, I wish I had and there's my dog because I'm coughing. And that's going to be your go-to. And you should also have, you could also list Canada in this stage, Brazil, most of Europe would be used in this stage, South Korea, but definitely United States. Good job. All right, what type of factors are these? So famine, war, lack of jobs, disease, violence, high crime, overcrowding. What type of factors? Yes, push factors, absolutely correct. All right, another, I like that. You are faster. Another thing that I like, I'm sorry, this is another type of migration. So just take a look at this map. So we already talked about voluntary migration, that the Great Migration was a voluntary migration. What type of migration do you think of this as an example of? I could have used Jews being forced to move to the ghettos in Nazi Germany. I could have used a map that showed the Trail of Tears when Native Americans were forced to, darn, I gave away the answer. When they were encouraged to move. So for your answer, because my mouth was too big, was forced migration. So your definition for forced migration should have been the permanent movement compelled by cultural or environmental or political factors. So that is forced migration. Really good. All right. Not doing too bad here. All right. But keeping right along with another type of migration. So we've done forced, we've done voluntary migration. This is another type of migration. So when migrants from a particular town or country, etc., follow others from that town, country to a particular destination, what type of migration is this? So the example that I used here, and I thought that it was just so beautiful, I did label it for you. So if we've had a group of folks migrating from Turkey to an ethnic enclave in Berlin, Germany. So this was a great map that I found online of all the various ethnic enclaves that could be found in Germany. There are things, all of this red area here represents Turkish folks and where they went. These darker areas are Italians. You have Portuguese here. I'm sorry I'm getting so close because the writing is so small. These light green areas are those are Vietnamese. The pink areas are, I want to say they are Polish. So what type of migration? I know I'm used to this type of migration being from New York. So being in New York, we have a huge Puerto Rican and Dominican population there. We have Spanish Harlem. So we have a lot of folks who leave Puerto Rico and come to America or the Dominican Republic. And I'm sorry, not America, and come to New York, or the Dominican Republic and come to New York. So following, my family did this. I decided to move to Georgia, so they decided to leave New York and come to Georgia. So any idea what this type of migration is? This concept is called chain migration. So one person goes, and as a result of one person going, the other person follows behind, or group or family. So thankfully, I was able to get my mother, my aunt, my sister, grandparents, other aunts to move to Georgia. And they came because I came. So it's a chain. Somebody was there who could kind of set you up. So write that concept down if you are unsure. All right. Another concept that you needed to know, I want to know, is this immigration or immigration? So there's a visual here. To leave a country or region to live somewhere else. So here's some examples. Sally immigrated from Brazil in 1995. Many people immigrated from Germany in the 1800s. What type of immigration is this? Is this the one with the E or the one with the I? And the letter will be 5. You should have that this is immigration with an I. So when you're leaving, your country and you're moving out, it's the immigration with the I. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go back to those stages of the DTM because you have to know them. All right, here we go again. Name that DTM stage. Is this 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? And a number will be just fine. We're almost done. Absolutely. Oh, y'all are so good. I'm feeling so good about y'all and what you're going to do on the AP exam. So this is stage 2 of the DTM. We call this stage the early expanding stage. So this is going to be the spot where you're going to see introduction of modern medicine. You're going to see, as a result of that, your death rates are going to lower, especially among children. Birth rates are still going to remain kind of high, still, because folks are still afraid that, oh, maybe my child isn't going to make it. Folks are still living on farms, so they still need to have those, large families to work the farm. You're going to see a lot of developing countries, LDCs in this stage. What would be a go-to example that you should have for a country that would be in this stage? So again, we have the United States for stage 4. I think we had Australia would be stage 4. What would be a country that you would categorize as this stage? For me, go-to examples that I have are India, Kenya, Egypt. A lot of spots in Africa are going to be categorized in this stage. There's only 2 countries in Africa that you would not place in stage 2 of the DTM because of their economic prosperity. And that's going to be South Africa and Nigeria. Those are the only 2 that you wouldn't put in that stage. All right, let's keep it going. And if you get hold of this slide, I hope that you're able to access it when we're done here. I've put a lot of things in the notes section and links to sites and things that you could go to just help you refresh your memory and, if you're unsure about something. All right. I tried to include 2 images on this to help you. I want you to name that red line. And I'm hoping that the image of the world holding up all of those people will help you identify this concept. So what does this red line represent? And let me give you a definition. The population size of a species that the environment can sustain indefinitely, given the available resources. Another way to say that will be the largest number of people that the environment of a particular area can support. So let me see. I'm hearing max population. I like that, max population. We call it, another concept way to say it would be carrying capacity. So when you think about this world holding up these people, I mean, the earth has a breaking limit. The land can only sustain so much before it starts to just not be able to support the people and give it the resources that it needs. So max population, carrying capacity is what it would normally be called in your text. All right, here we go. Another image. So again, this is a concept dealing with our population unit. And so I am asking you to take a look at this image. What does TFR stand for? What is the definition of TFR? And there's a number that is associated with TFR. So I am getting total fertility rate, which is absolutely correct. Thank you. And what is the definition of TFR? Could you think about that for a moment and type that? And while you're typing out your response, I want to take a look at this graphic that I've included here on the screen. If you look, Nigeria has a TFR of 7.1. I wonder what that means. Let's see, South Sudan has a TFR of 5.9. What does that mean? If you look at the TFR of Singapore, it's 1.3, while the TFR of Australia is 1.9. So this concept of total fertility rate, what do you remember about learning about that when you were in your population and migration unit? So I'm getting here, it is babies born for every 1,000 people, and replacement level is 2. Absolutely correct. Most of the time they say that the replacement level is 2.1. So it is total fertility rate is the total amount of babies that a woman needs to have to replace herself and one other person. Why? Because males can't replace themselves, women have to do the replacing. And 2.1 is that magic number. So it's an average. So just remember, TFR stands for total fertility rate. It's the total number of total number of children that a woman needs to have to replace herself and someone else. And that magic number is 2.1. Good job. All right, I feel like we're almost coming to the end, you guys. We only have a few more. All right, here we go. Looking at these images, would these images be push factors or would these images be pull factors? So when you think about pollution, natural disasters, and a factory or something closing down, what would that be? Push, 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 easy. Excellent. Thank you. Here we go again, E or I. What type of immigration is this? To come to a new country or region to live there? When did you immigrate to Canada? My grandparents immigrated to America in 1952. So is this the E or is this the I? All right. Y'all are rocking and rolling. And I always think of it like this. E means to enter. So I always think that that's a good way to remember immigration. When you're coming into a spot, it's E for enter. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, here we go. What stage of the DTM does this section of the DTM represent? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Absolutely awesome. Yes. Do you remember the name of this stage? Let's see if you can type that in because y'all responded really quick with that one. Can you name the state? Name the stage. It's a good time to take a swig of my water. Y'all are typing a lot. Now remember, in this stage, some of those characteristics are your your birth rates and your death rates are going to be extremely high. And the reason why those birth rates and death rates are so high is because folks are having a lot of children, and because they're having a lot of children, and they need a lot of children because they're an agricultural community and they need those children to work the land. However, there's no medicines, there's no vaccinations. Those things haven't been developed yet at this stage. So just as fast as folks are having kids, they are dying. And so with that in mind, your natural rate of increase is extremely low because the population is not increasing. This stage is called the high stationary stage. So I really want y'all to go back and make sure you look at your DTM stages and that you're able to identify birth rate, death rate, rate of natural increase, the reasons why things are happening at each of those levels. Go back to your epidemiological transition. Make sure you can recognize why folks are dying in each of these stages. And what would be an example of a country excuse me, that is in this stage? What's an example of a country in this stage? Ooh, that was a trick question. Very good. There's absolutely not one country left that is in this stage. However, I do want to add that you are going to find small remote groups that are in this stage. So for example, tribes. If you're looking at certain tribes that live in the outback of Australia, they're going to be located in this. They're kind of isolated from society. If you look at remote groups that are still thriving in the Amazon rainforest, those small tribes could still be classified in this stage, but you're not going to find whole entire countries. Absolutely correct. All right, here we go. What concept does this image represent? So in your population unit, you should have examined when you were looking at population clusters. Early on in the slides, we talked about the BosWash Corridor, the Boston-Washington Corridor. What does this slide represent? Oh, that's so good. Yeah, population concentration is absolutely correct. And it's also in conjunction with the 3 largest population clusters in the world. So you need to make sure that you remember that when we're looking, and then this goes back to scale, right? When you're looking at a global scale, The three largest population clusters in the world the majority of the people in the world live in Europe, South Asia, and East Asia. If we're looking at a regional level scale from the United States, well, for us, that's the BosWash Corridor. So that's examining things from, if you saw the stream that I did about looking at scale and why scale is important, this is why scale is important. So we know that South Asia has an extremely large population, and East Asia and Europe. Excellent. All right, here we go. All right, name this type of migration. So I just wanted to make sure that you hit this. So this type of migration represents a series of small moves to reach a destination. So I did, first, you want to get to the big city, but first you start off in your village. Then you may leave your village and go to your small town, and you may stay there for a little bit. Then after you leave your small town, you migrate to a little larger town. And then you stay there for a little bit before finally making your jump to the big city. So what is it? What is this migration called when you do it in a series of small moves? So this is known as interregional. No, but that's no, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, that's not correct, but that's okay. Thank you so much I want you to think of it as going up. This is called step migration. So step migration is when you move in a series of small steps. So just the concept, and like I said, there's so many concepts out there. I just hope I'm hitting some of the ones that your folks, and if some of them are new, then you just have an advantage point in some of your other folks who may not have gotten these concepts. We never know what all is going to be presented on that AP exam, but these are concepts that are important. All right, here we go. We're down to the last two. Identify the stage. So we've gone through them all. If you remember all of the ones that we've gone through, it should be easy to identify what's the stage of the DTM. And I would love to know, a country that would be your go-to example for this stage of your DTM. The correct answer is it's stage 5. So this is stage 5. This stage is known as the declining stage. And so go-to examples, for me, I always think of Japan. That's the one I told my kids. England would actually, is England in stage 5? Germany is a good stage. I'm gonna have to check on the England. I think I have England in stage 4 in my mind, but there could definitely be some more research out there pointing it towards stage 5. So I'll definitely go and look that up. I have Japan, Russia, China as my go-to examples. I definitely like Germany. The thing to keep in mind about 5 is that there's something going on within those countries that their populations are declining. What would be that go-to thing that would have contributed to China's population decline? Does anybody know what that would be that contributed to China's population decline? Russia definitely has an aging population. The one-child policy, absolutely correct for China. And so as a result of that, and we know what was going on with the one-child policy, especially as it pertained to the females in the society, as males were favored. And so now there's just not enough females there. Japan definitely, because Japan is definitely a homogenous society, and they definitely keep you know, their traditions and everything. So they definitely have an aging population. You guys rock. All right, this is our last one for the evening. Thank you so much. So these are things which are not revealed by the blank and are considered limitations to the model. We've been talking about this model all evening. So it's not just enough to know. So AP also, the expectation is that you also know, especially once we start getting into these models, are these models still applicable today in 2019? And what are some of the limitations? So what model am I referencing by these limitations? Number one, the impact of other demographic variables such as migration are not considered. So when you're looking at the various stages, they're not represented. And the model does not predict how long a country will be in each stage. So what is the model that we've been looking at all evening that has limitations? Absolutely correct, the DTM. So I want you, if you have been keeping a tally, there were a total of 32 key terms. If you were keeping pace, could you tell me how many did you get wrong? And I'll tell you what your score was. You could just put, and there's no shame. We're all here just sharing and learning. And while you're tallying up how many you missed or what are the ones you need to go over, I just want to remind you that thank y'all so much. Again, follow us at Think Fiveable. Remember Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. And I wanted to get your feedback because it's so vital to me. So you should be finished with the population and migration unit. I was interested in knowing what unit are you studying right now, because some AP Hug teachers do bounce around, especially if they feel I don't have enough time, and I want to make sure that you get this concept first. So number one, what unit have y'all moved out of population and migration, and what unit are you in right now? My thought was that the next unit that the next couple of weeks, the streams were going to focus on industrial and economic development patterns and process, which is really towards the end of the study of AP Human Geography. But it is such a hefty unit. And there are so many models and so many key concepts, and it's a beast. So I wanted to kind of go there and look at those units and wanted to know if you would be okay. For some of you, this may be previewing. So if you could just type what unit you're in right now. And this unit would focus on the following concepts, the economic, and if we look at the unit at a glance, it's going to cover the Industrial Revolution. It's going to cover economic sectors and patterns, measures of development, which are hefty, women and economic development, and it would also cover, let me see, I just lost. It would also cover theories of development, which is, again, some hefty concepts, trade and the world economy, changes as a result of the world economy, and sustainable development. So I will kind of be picking the big things from those various sections. So if you could just chime in and let me know where you are right now, I would greatly appreciate it. And that is my time. I'm going to take a few moments because I know you're probably gathering your thoughts, and I want to say thank you so much for joining me this evening. I surely appreciated having you with me, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.